I'm the girl you call from jail. It does not matter where you are or what you've done. I'm coming, and I'm not going to leave you. My friends have always known this about me, but strangely, my family didn't. I think we get locked into character roles in families. It's shorthand. Frankly, it's just easier to know someone rather than actually getting to know them, actually seeing them, recognizing and accepting them, not only as they are and have been, but also as they evolve. When I was 9, my mother took me on a mommy and me trip to New York City. It was magical. And from that visit on, I never wanted to live anyplace else ever. I proclaimed at 9 that I would live in New York, and I did, very happily, for the better part of 2 decades. And in my family, that's who I became, the city girl, always in motion, no time to waste on little stuff. My world was big, my jobs were demanding, my friends were famous. I traveled all over the world. But I seldom had time to travel home, and the distance created was more than geography. My mom, she was a genius at magical moments. The first time I ate lobster, she took me to Maine. And when she realized how tall I was going to be, she brought home a stack of fashion magazines. She took me through every glossy, glamorous page, telling me that the women in these incredible images, surrounded by beauty, were 6 feet tall. She was the homeroom volunteer, the Girl Scout cookie mom, and always the first hand to reach you whenever you fell or failed, had a bad day, or thought the world was ending. She admitted to me once that she worked at that. She always wanted to be the first soothing, reassuring voice or touch when her children cried out. And in our family, that's who she became. Then something happened. My mother is measured, deliberate, dignified above all else. But she started to have these outbursts, random, strange, mean-spirited, and frankly tough to take. My parents came to New York a lot to visit, and on one such occasion, I took them to a museum and to lunch. We sat down, we ordered, and my world came completely apart. My mother wasn't happy with me, and she took that moment in public to tell me so, to enumerate every single thing that's wrong with me in excruciating detail. My mother told me what a completely disappointing person I am, how she'd expected to be proud of me, but that certainly wasn't going to happen. Over more than an hour, she cursed every decision I'd made in my adult life. And the appropriate topper, the result of my poor character and life choices. No wonder nobody loves you. It was the most painful, horrific, and frankly disorienting thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And I didn't speak to my mother for a year. Now, the thing that precipitated my mother's outburst was the biggest family drama we'd ever had. It was a secret that had been kept since before I was born, and a situation, and this is really key, over which my mother had maintained complete control for more than 60 years. My mother never would have told me, but my dad did, and she was really angry about it. The loss of control rattled her. I mean, really rattled her, and she was just itching to get me, and frankly the world, back into proper place. Okay, so the day after the restaurant debacle, my dad arrives at my office unannounced. He couldn't say anything. He just wanted to be near me. He just wanted it to be okay. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be. He knew because, of course, he knew that there was another secret. Okay, so let me tell you how my family works. My parents have been married for more than 60 years, and they love each other. You don't keep that going without making some affirmative choices. You don't come between them. You won't come between them because they won't let you. Not even if you're their kid and they love you to pieces. Okay, so more than a year later, I'm on the phone with my parents, which is about as close as I could make myself get to her because the attacks on me didn't stop. I remember it was a Friday and I was walking home from work. I was in Union Square when the feeling hit. Something's not right here. Really not right. I wonder now, looking back, how many times I ignored what was right in front of me. But that afternoon, I couldn't shake it. Friday night, then Saturday night, so Sunday morning, when my parents got home from church, I was in their house looking around, and I didn't like what I saw. Frankly, I didn't even understand it. My parents are very much creatures of their era. My mother kept house, a very beautiful, tidy house. And she was a great cook, which is good, because my dad can't fry an egg. But that Sunday morning, on a very strangely untidy kitchen counter, lined up against the backsplash, were dozens of cans of Campbell's soup. What the? It took a while, but when my parents got home, I finally got the truth. Here's the second secret my parents had been keeping. My mother has dementia. I didn't even really know what that meant at the time. But that Sunday morning, looking at those soup cans and picturing my dad pouring in the water and stirring a little pot on the stove, my heart simply crumbled. I had some decisions to make. Actually, they were all made in that instant, but it just took a minute for my feet to catch up. Inside of 8 months, I left the life I had built in New York and came home to South Carolina. I was terrified. How could I be with my mother every day, responsible for her care, and bearing the brunt of those outbursts? Let me tell you a little something about people with dementia. They know you. They know what buttons to push, and they will push them until you bleed out. Anger, aggression, moodiness, verbal outbursts. Just another day with dementia. I seriously wondered how I could survive. One night, I went out onto the middle of the golf course, which we all know you really shouldn't do in alligator country. But I thought it might be the only place where no one could hear me. I screamed at the top of my lungs. And then I got really clear. Surviving would never be enough. Surviving, to me, is like being resilient. Let me tell you something. If somebody you go to for help starts talking to you about how resilient you are, that's a pretty clear indication that they are distracting you from the fact that they don't have, and maybe aren't even looking for, solutions for anything that's happening with you. It is all smoke and mirrors. Screw resilience. Solve the problem. But of course, the first part of solving any problem is actually identifying it. Dementia wasn't our problem. Dementia didn't send me screaming out onto the golf course. That was anger and hurt and disillusionment. I mean, here I am, giving up my life in Manhattan to care for 2 elderly people? What an act of love. What a sacrifice. Everyone said so. And my repayment? Torture. Okay, we like to tell ourselves these little stories, right? In which we are hero, saint, martyr, victim, and yes, so resilient. Hiding behind a halo makes it easy to blame somebody else for the pain. It's not my fault, she did this to me. Hiding behind a halo allows us to exist without confronting the real problem. Fear. The moment my parents and I left that restaurant that afternoon, I blocked what happened there. I couldn't face it. I couldn't process it. Because she's my mother. She's the first hand to reach me whenever anything goes wrong. She's pure magic And she loves me. That's her character. That's her role. And that's a foundation, a pillar of my life. And if that's not who she is, then who am I? Maybe I'm not the girl you call from jail. In which case, no wonder nobody loves you. Deep down, I was terrified that my mother was right, that I was somehow innately unlovable, unworthy, a horrible person. I couldn't face my mother because I was refusing to face myself. But I'm not a victim. My life is about my choices, like the choice to cut my mother out of my life. Excuse me. People grappling with dementia know what's happening to them, even if they don't fully understand. Day by day, hour by hour, my mother was losing control of every aspect of her life. Her ability to reason, to make decisions, to comprehend the world around her, even to maintain and safeguard her own body. She was wandering alone in the dark, and she was terrified. It's hard for me to think now about how long she must have been suffering, about how long she needed help, and about how long I didn't see it because I was too busy, too wounded, or too attached to her family role to recognize and accept that her role was changing, just like mine. We make forgiveness about other people a great, magnanimous gesture. It isn't. Forgiveness is about you. It is a decision and an intentional practice. It is having the courage to face your fear, to walk through that fire, to find love and peace that are waiting for you. Love and peace you deserve. You did not deserve what happened to you. That is the truth. This is also the truth. You cannot live underneath your halo, because if you do, you will always be a victim. Ditch the halo, blow past resilience, become resourceful. Find a way to face your fear. And when you do, if you need to, as a first step, forgive yourself and move forward to forgiving others. For me, I started to see my mother differently. I began to ask myself deep down, what is it that she's so afraid of? I guarantee you the answers are there. They're likely buried, but they're there. Keep looking. I did. And there it was. One morning, mid-rage, I walked over to my mother. I very calmly took her hands in mine. I looked into her eyes and said, "I'm not going to leave you." I squeezed her hands and wrapped my arms around her. "I'm not going to leave you." I hugged her tighter. "I'm not going to leave you." And my mother, who was orphaned at 14 months old, my mother, who never made friends easily or kept them for long, my mother, who could only navigate the world when it was straight up and down, black and white, and completely within her control, my mother, who loves deeply but trusts all too rarely, my tough-as-nails mother, who because of dementia was losing the only thing she'd ever truly been able to count on, her iron grip on her own reality. In that moment, my mother let go. The calm that settled into our lives after that didn't come all at once, but it came consistently, and it has stayed. And I'll tell you something, we don't look for what we used to have or for how things used to be before dementia or before that grim afternoon at the restaurant. Don't try to relive, renew, rehash, revive. Embrace where you are and who you are right now with gratitude. Every morning, I make breakfast for my parents. Then I go back into their room where I lay out my mother's clothes. Then I wake her up. And every morning, she looks up at me and she says, "Thank you for taking care of me, Anna Banana. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much." She says it over and over and over again, sometimes all the way into the kitchen. And it is pure magic. It makes perfect sense to me that my mother's great fear and mine are finding their resolutions together. People still ask me about all I gave up to come home. Well, look what I got. I believe that I was always going to be here, that I was always going to be the one to take care of my parents. Because deep down, despite all the big city shine, it's just who I am. The girl you call from jail. Thank you.